Nostalgia is the key word in this journey taking us from Edinburgh in Scotland to Britain's capital, London, in the comfortable plush of the Royal Scotsman. Like the Orient Express, the Royal Scotsman is a legend which the passing years have seen restored from faded glory to its former splendor. In renovated Pullman carriages, the Royal Scotsman takes one past many famous scenes from Britain's rich heritage and shows the travelers the startling beauty of the British countryside. We begin our journey at Edinburgh, one of the friendliest and most beautiful cities in Europe, situated among lakes and volcanic hills. The city is divided between the somewhat run-down Old Town and the aristocratic-looking New Town, which arose in the 18th century, when Scotland was the intellectual center of Europe. In this period, Edinburgh evolved into what it still is, a remarkable combination of late medieval and neoclassical buildings and gardens galore. High above the Old Town, on the crater of the almost prehistoric volcano, stands the famous Edinburgh Castle. It is now a monumental tourist attraction, offering a magnificent panorama over the city. It was the scene of battles with English armies, which ultimately ended with Scotland giving up its independence and joining the United Kingdom in 1707. The southern part of the countryside around Edinburgh borders the Pentland Hills, whose tops reach some 600 meters. The unpredictable Scottish climate seldom allows this hilly area snow covering. As a result, it has been transformed into one of the world's largest artificial ski slopes. Against the classical Scottish decor, it does make one think. It is one of those typically Scottish, drizzly days when the famous Royal Scotsman draws into Edinburgh's Waverley Station, pulled by a diesel, as most of the British rail network will no longer take steam locomotives. Despite this, the train exemplifies the grandeur of a rich history. The locomotive pulls 9 coaches, an original Pullman panorama carriage, 2 post-war restaurant cars, 4 hotel carriages, also of Pullman origin, and 2 coaches for the extensive crew, who see to the passengers' every need during the journey. Traveling by the Royal Scotsman does not come cheap, but those who can afford it have an unforgettable trip. Passengers' comfort is in no way left to chance. Before departure, fresh ingredients are taken on board for the preparation of lavish dinners. Pushing to get on board would not be at all fitting. The red carpet is laid down for the passengers, and a steward is standing by to give them a personal welcome. As the sounds of the bagpipe slowly merge into the grinding of the wheels, we settle back to enjoy it all. The journey has begun. The first stretch takes us across the Anglo-Scottish border to Alnmouth. This interesting route shows us the beautiful scenery along the east coast of Scotland in all its glory. Not all the passengers have time to appreciate this, as the temptation of the delicacies being handed around proves almost too much to resist. At the coastal town of Berwick, we have the centuries-old Royal Border Bridge over the River Tweed ahead of us. Alnmouth is worth a visit, not so much for the town itself, but because of Alnwick Castle, from time immemorial the seat of the Dukes of Northumberland. The castle was originally built as an impregnable fortress in the defense line of the Scottish coast. But this was a good 1,000 years ago. It is now a carefully preserved, monumental structure set in peaceful, romantic landscape. Before we pursue the journey toward London, we seize the opportunity to go for a trip with the authentic steam locomotive, the Welldale S134, owned by Emsay Steam Railway. This is one of the many private railway lines to be found in Great Britain. They're generally maintained by a club of train enthusiasts who devote many a day off to the upkeep of the locomotive and carriages. And of course, we tourists reap the benefits, as the private lines generally go through magnificent scenic areas. From the Welldale to the British Barton Hill locomotive is quite a change in every respect. But this locomotive is indispensable for the next stretch, down to York. We happily take our seats. With sunset approaching, it will soon be time to move to the restaurant car, where dinner will be served. An exceptional experience, enjoying an outstanding meal while watching the landscape rush past and fade into complete darkness to the accompaniment of the monotonous cadence of the wheels. After dinner, coffee is served in the appropriate manner. In the evening, the accent is on entertainment, though amusement between the rails does have an obvious restriction, there being no room for dancing. Fortunately, though, there's plenty of good conversation, so we'll reach York without a moment of boredom. Tonight, we won't be rocked to sleep by the cadence of the train, for it remains standing at York Station. The city has too many tourist attractions for us simply to pass it by. A good reason for a visit to York is the National Railway Museum. Great Britain has a rich history in steam trains. The great variety of locomotives that have gone over the British tracks becomes clear from a visit to this museum, which is the largest of its kind in the country. Here, important locomotives have been saved from the scrap heap and preserved for the museum. The main attraction is without a doubt the authentic turntable, used to shunt locomotives to the other end. York is a city with great historical awareness. The history of our city is the history of England, say its citizens. The history of York goes back to the Romans, so they do have a point. The Roman wall of the city is tangible evidence of this. Without doubt, the most spectacular building in York is York Minster. Building began in 1220 under Archbishop de Grey. In the end, the building took 200 years to complete and became world famous in the centuries following. Particularly fine are the 128 stained glass windows, varying in age from 70 years old to a good 800 years. Stonegate is York's fashionable shopping center. Cars are not allowed, so the medieval and Gregorian architecture can be seen to best advantage. Compared with many of the city's assets, York Station isn't really a monument, although it does have monumental characteristics. In any case, it provides an appropriate setting for our train. While the passengers go off into the city, the crew prepare for the London stretch. Another treat is in store for the passengers, who are first greeted with a welcome-back drink.
Very good.
What is this? How did you know? It's what?
I thought we rather needed that.
Yes.
En route to London, we travel through the scenic part of the Midlands, in pleasant contrast to the industrial areas of Sheffield, Derby, and Birmingham. The reason we are traveling across this area has to do with the last stop before London, Cranmore, for a visit to yet another special locomotive. From Cranmore is a short car journey to Corsham Court. This is the base of the East Somerset Railway, another former private line that has been turned into a museum. In this wide-stretching countryside, seemingly untouched by time, it doesn't take much to imagine how things must have been in times gone by. In the light of the setting sun, the sight of the locomotive gives you an overwhelming feeling of nostalgia. There is little room for nostalgia at our next destination, and the final one in our trip, London. This section, from Chippenham to London's Paddington Station, has a historical theme. It was originally the most prominent part of the Bristol to London route. The track was laid under the supervision of a certain Isambard Kingdom Brunel, a man way ahead of his time. The track was of extremely sound material and ultimately formed a basis for the present-day intercity trains racing over them at some 120 miles an hour. In his day, trains certainly went no faster than some 30 or 40 miles an hour. The stretch to London is also the culinary climax of the journey, crowned with a magnificent fruit dessert. While recovering from our lovely dinner, we're again aware of the beauties of this part of Great Britain. another dilemma presents itself. Shall we enjoy uninterrupted reading of a paper or magazine? Or shall we dream away the time by gazing absent-mindedly at the countryside racing past? It's a fine conclusion to a remarkable trip in a remarkable train, ending up at a remarkable station. Paddington Station was built in 1854 because London Station had outgrown itself. It was also designed by Mr. Brunel. He gave the station a roof with a span of over 1,000 feet, unique in those days. And Paddington Station is still remarkable. Where else would you find waiting you a row of taxis all lined up on the platform? This could probably only happen here. A visit to London offers many opportunities. Too many, in fact, for a short visit. We opted for Trafalgar Square with its statue of Lord Nelson, the greatest hero in Great Britain's maritime history. In terms of monumental structures, the Houses of Parliament at the conclusion of this journey are also well worth a visit. Anyone visiting London should not miss a boat trip on the Thames. If you haven't sailed under Tower Bridge, you can't claim to have seen London. Next time, join us on Railway for a spectacular journey through South Africa. We'll travel in luxury and style on the famous Rovos train from Pretoria to Cape Town. So come with us to one of the most talked about countries in the world, South Africa, on our next Railway.